Hello, welcome to Steppingstone Museum and an episode of Artifact Answers. Today, our artifact in question is a fluting iron. Fluting irons are easy enough to find in an attic or an antique store or on eBay, but the real question is, what do you do with it? Fluting irons were used for centuries to set rows of ruffles or pleats in strips of fabric that could then be used in various articles of clothing. Today, we're going to be looking at some of the history of fluting irons and how to use one. The first fluting irons were called goffering irons or tally irons and looked something like our hair curling irons from today. The earliest versions were unheated and set in fabric wet with starch to dry. This created the many stiff ruffles in the fashionable neck ruffs of the day. The first heated variety was a poking iron that came into use around 1570. The fluter changed over time to increase its efficiency. Some fluters operated as a press and others with rollers. Fluters were so important that they were incorporated into irons like these, which were patented in the 1880s. Fluters were necessary for goffering the many yards of ruffled trim seen on dresses worn especially during the second half of the 19th century, such as those worn by these women playing croquet. Today we are looking at a Geneva hand fluter. The Geneva hand fluter is named for the place of its birth, Geneva, Illinois. It was patented in 1866 and was produced through about 1920. These irons might have been sold with 2 flat bases and 1 rocker piece. This allowed a laundress to keep one base on a hot stove while using the other, or to link them together. This was a tedious process that would have to be repeated with every washing. So now that we know more about the history of the fluting iron, let's try using one ourselves. If you have just acquired your fluting iron, or if it has been sitting around in the attic for years, then it probably needs a good cleaning. Using water and a good scrub brush, and a very mild soap if needed, scrub the fluter to remove dust and other buildup. Next, you will want to protect your fluter by seasoning it. The seasoning process is the same as for cast iron cookware. The best oil for seasoning is flaxseed or linseed oil. However, due to its prohibitive cost, for this purpose, vegetable oil can work as well. Lightly coat both pieces of the fluting iron with the oil of your choice. I am applying it with a paper towel so that I can better control how much is on the fluting iron and to make sure that it gets between the ridges. You don't want to use too much oil or your fluter will be sticky afterwards. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Place both the base and the rocker of the fluting iron in the oven as it preheats. Once the oven is up to temperature, set your timer for 1 hour. Once this hour is up, turn the oven off, but leave the fluting iron in the oven until it cools. This will take several hours. When you take out your fluting iron, it should look nice and shiny, but should not have residue from the oil. If it does, then scrub it down and start the process again, being sure not to coat it too heavily. Now your fluter is ready to go. Preheat the oven to 450 degrees. Place both pieces of the fluter in the oven and set a timer for 25 minutes. A note of caution here. Some people have had fluting irons melt at this temperature if their fluters have a high tin content, since 450 degrees is the melting point for tin. I have not experienced that with this fluter, but you can lower the temperature to 425 degrees to start out if you choose. While the fluter is heating up, make sure your fabric is ready for use. To help shape the ruffles, you will want to spray the fabric with vinegar or water. Use a paper towel to dab off the excess if needed. For this demonstration, we are using vinegar on a small piece of lightweight silk taffeta that is the width of the fluter. However, other fabrics, like linen and cotton, can work as well. Make sure you test your fabric to see what will work best. When the timer goes off, use hot pads to remove the fluting iron rocker and base from the oven. Be careful not to burn yourself in the process. Place them on a folded towel or countertop surface. Quickly lay one end of your fabric on top of the hot fluting iron base and, using a hot pad, pick up the rocker and rock it across the base, starting with the end of the fabric. This way, the length of the fabric will feed into the ridges of the fluting iron. The wet fabric will sizzle as it makes contact with the hot iron. Once this section has been fluted, put down the rocker and move the next section of the fabric up to the end of the base. Use the rocker to flute the next section, taking care to start from the end closest to the recently fluted area. Continue this process until all of your fabric has been fluted. As needed, you can place the iron back in the oven for 5-minute intervals to heat it back up again. Congratulations on your new fabric trim and new skill. Happy fluting!